Gunnar's Daughter, Chapter 21. That winter wore on, and nothing happened that is worth relating. It was past the equinox, and the sun was gaining power down in the valleys, so that the snow on the roofs thawed in the daytime. Folk were felling timber in their woods, and one morning Gunnar rode out with one man to see to his housecarls, who were at work west in the forest. About midday, Asha and Vigdis were in the hall, setting food on the table, and Asha looked out of the door. "Gunnar is coming home already," she said, "but he seems to sit his horse strangely. He must be either drunk or sick." With that, she went out to meet him. Vigdis took the porridge pot from the fire and was setting out spoons when she heard a great cry from Asha. And now they came in, Skofti and another man, leading Gunnar between them. Asha walked beside them, wringing her hands. Vigdis then saw that her father's face was pale, and that his white beard lay bloody upon his chest. Vigdis dropped all she had in her hands. She ran to her father and asked what had happened. Gunnar made signs that they were to carry him to the bench. He sat for a while, leaning his head against the wall, and then he said, "This has happened. I have spoken with Eyolf of Grimlander, and our speech took such a turn that we shall have no more words together." Vigdis asked quickly, "Is Eyolf killed?" "No," answered Gunnar, "but doubtless my end is at hand." Asha and Vigdis undressed Gunnar and looked at his wounds. They saw then that he spoke the truth. Vigdis said, "Now you must tell us, father, how this came about." Gunnar answered, "It so chanced that we met in the woods, Eyolf and I, and he used words to me about you, Vigdis. You can guess I did not keep calm and let him throw my daughter's dishonor in my teeth." Vigdis made no answer. They laid Gunnar in his bed. He bade Skofti go north at once and bring his housecarls home to the manor, for there was no knowing what the sons of Arn might do now. And said he, Eyolf swore he would make Vigdis his leman. Asha seated herself by Gunnar, but Vigdis took Olaf, the man who had been with Gunnar, into a corner and questioned him closely. "How did you defend your master, Olaf?" "As well as I could," the man replied, "and Gunnar defended himself as you would expect of him. We killed each a man, but there were 6 of them. When Gunnar got his death blow, I ran to him and caught him as he fell from his horse, and then the others rode off." "Do you know whether they were heading?" asked Vigdis again. "I know that the Grimlandings are lying by the tarn nearest the Gausted wood, that they call the Child's Tarn," replied the housecarl. "They are felling timber on the ridge there. Vigdis was silent for a moment. Then she said, "I dare say Eyolf thinks he did a good work before his dinner. 'Tis likely the swine sleeps now with a full belly." After saying this, she went out and crossed to the bower. She opened her chest and took out the priestess's knife, bound a dark kerchief about her head, and put on a black cloak. Stepping into the courtyard, she found skis and staff in the penthouse, and now she set out on skis across the fields up to the forest and kept along the edge of the woods towards Gausted. She turned north of the houses and followed the low ridge that runs behind the manor. There was a hard crust under the trees, and her skis ran lightly. So it was not long before she sighted the white plain around the tarn and the log cabin that the Grimlander folk had there. There were signs that many men had passed over the ground, and timber had been drawn there. It was covered with chips and bark and wisps of hay, but there was no one to be seen. Vigdis kept among the trees and stole under cover up to the cabin. She slipped off her skis and peeped in. An axe and a shield lay by the door, and she knew them for Eyolf's. The cabin was 3 logs high and very narrow. She entered and saw that 2 men lay there asleep. One of them was Eyolf. Vigdis went first to the other sleeping bench. She took the cloak that the man had spread over him and wrapped it about his head. With her other hand she drew the knife and thrust it into his throat. The man died at once. Then she turned to where Eyolf lay. Vigdis put her hand on his breast and woke him. "Awake now, Eyolf. You are to get what you long have sought for. Here is Vigdis from Vadden to make sport with you." Eyolf started up from his sleep, and the cabin was dark, and he could not see clearly. Vigdis said again, "True it is that I have lost my honor since I have come to you and your bed." As she spoke, she struck at him with the knife. and this time Vigdis did not miss her aim. Eolf fell backwards and the blood gushed from his throat. She plunged the knife into him twice again, and the last time she did not draw it out, but let go of the haft and leaning forward to watch him die. She drew her hands through the blood that poured from him and dried them in his hair. And when Eolf had breathed his last, Vigdis went out, put on her skis, and started off through the forest. It had turned colder, and Vigdis moved rapidly, for now the way was mostly downhill. But now and again she had to stop, as her legs trembled under her, and all the time she could see Eolf dying under her hand. And it was to her as though she had now taken vengeance for more than Gunnar's death. She had now done violence upon a man, and he was no more able to defend himself against her than she against Jot. The thought stirred her so intensely that she did not know how wildly she ran on and scarcely saw where she was going. And so it chanced, as she was mounting a slope, that she came into a logging track, and there she met Cole Arnson and some of his men. They were driving empty timber sledges, and they saw her and called to her. Cole and another man ran out into the snow after her, but the crust was not hard enough to bear them, and they had no skis. Vigdis turned off through the copsewood towards a stream that ran below and took to the ice. Though it was gray and waterlogged, it barely held her and broke behind her skis, but over she came, and so she got away from them. After this, she did not stop till she reached the yard at home, and then she went straight into the hall and up to Gunnar's bed. He was asleep, and Asha sat beside him. Vigdis cried out, "Wake up, father! I have welcome news for you. I have now done what I could to lessen our shame, for Eolf Arnson is killed by me." Gunnar bade them raise him up in his bed, while Vigdis told him of her doings. Then Gunnar asked her to bend down that he might kiss her. He said, "You have now shown yourself a brave and manly woman, as I once hoped you would prove, and I no longer harbor anger against you for letting that Icelander seduce you, but I wish you all well, you and your child." Vigdis then told him of her meeting with Cole, and Gunnar asked if he had recognized her. "That I cannot say," answered Vigdis, "but he will recognize the priestess's knife, and that I left with Eolf." To this said Gunnar, "Little power have I to protect you, and it may be long ere Skofti comes back with the men. It will be best for you to take the boy and go to Grifson at once. I can trust care that he will not forget the good I have done him. But Olaf is to take all my goods here and hide them in that pool in the river, south of the hill on which our outer barn stands." "I will not leave you now, father," said Vigdis, but Gunnar replied, "It is my wish that you save yourself and your child, for I will not see our race perish. There's little strength left in me. I have lived long enough. But go you at once to Grefsen, you and Asha." Asha said, "I am no good for running on skis, and I will not leave you now, Gunnar. Good master that you have been to me and mine. Nor is it certain that Cole will come for us here tonight, but Vigdis must go, and Care will surely give us all the help he can." Thus it was settled that Asha would stay with Gunnar. They could not dissuade her from it. Vigdis went to her bower, woke the boy, and dressed him. She collected her most costly possessions, gold and jewels, in a leather bag, and put some bread and smoked meat with them, for there was no time to feed the boy before they left. Then she took him on her arm, went back to her father, and bade him farewell. Gunnar kissed them both. Afterwards she took leave of Asha with great affection, and prayed they might meet again.